Western individualism has given us the gift of expanding personal freedom. But at the same time, it also has cursed us with the sense of isolation. Even though we live among people, many people in communities, we cry out in our hearts, no one needs me. No one loves me. And no one cares for me. And we keep seeking the care we long for from people. We have no one who understands us sincerely, who comforts us, comfort our wounded hearts, and no one to heal our wounds. One of the commentators, Charles Rich, says this: America is on vast, terrifying anti-community. The great organizations to which most people give their working day. And when they return home at night, there's nothing. There are places of loneliness and alienation. And hostility and fear have replaced the warmth of the circle of affection, which might sustain us against the hostile universe. This is exactly what happens when you don't have a shepherd. When you don't have a shepherd. There's a tremendous and stark difference between a leader and a shepherd. A leader may not know or need to know every detail of your life. Think about your boss. Think about community leaders. Think about a mayor or a senator, a governor, religious leaders. Do they know you? You can't say they know you, but they're leaders, but they don't know every detail of your life. They don't know you, most likely. They don't know you personally. And that's a leader, and that's fine. But they don't know you. Because they don't know you, they can't really help you. They can't be a shepherd of your life. But you need a shepherd. You need a shepherd. Jesus says, I am the good shepherd, and I know my own, and my own know me. And the mutual knowledge and recognition between the sheep and the shepherd is at the center of the Christian life. The mutual knowledge and recognition between the shepherd and the sheep. In those times when a shepherd called out to the sheep, they made a unique sound. And the sheep, scattered and mingled with other flocks, would listen to it and would recognize the unique sound of their shepherd, and they will follow him, follow the shepherd whenever they are. But the problem is that we know Jesus, but we still live as if we have no shepherd. We say we know Jesus, we believe in Jesus, but we live as if there's no shepherd in our lives. That's our problem. And we don't realize he, as our shepherd, is deeply involved in our daily lives. What's the solution? What's the solution? You need to listen to the shepherd's voice and recognize it. That's it. And that's because you know him. You recognize him because you know him. Today when he speaks to us as our shepherd, believe it, by recognizing one thing. Actually, three things, but we're going to look at only one thing. Because I know you guys don't appreciate 40 to 50-minute sermon. So this morning I decided to divide it into two. So we're going to talk about the first point today, which is enough for the day. We are going to learn about the other 2 points. But the three things that Jesus as a shepherd speaks to you. First, he protects you, and he feeds you. Second, and he leads you. So protect you, protection, and feeding, and leading. So today, it's about protection. Protection. So these three things are elementary, so essential. Excuse me. These are the three essential elements that we spiritually cannot afford to be without. So these are the three things, essential elements of your faith, especially in relationship with Christ. First, Jesus the Good Shepherd protects you. Let me read it for you. Verse 7. So Jesus again said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep." The door. What does he mean by that? Was it the shepherd? What? Now he's talking about the door. So he's not. So don't imagine that when he says, "I am the door," there's the door here with eyes and nose and mouth on it, like you would see in cartoons. He's not becoming a real door here. Okay? I thought somebody would, laugh, but it's only on. So that's fine. It's a funny thing to think about Jesus being the door, and literally actually the door of the sheepfold. No. When it comes to protecting the sheep, the shepherd and the gate of the sheepfold mean the same thing. The Campbell Morgan, one of the greatest preachers in the day, in his book, he shares a story that gives a remarkable insight into how a shepherd becomes a door to. And he was traveling one day in the Middle East, and he was with a guide, and he came across the shepherd, a real shepherd, with his sheep. And then they fall into a conversation, and the shepherd shows him his sheep with the sheepfold gate. Not actually the gate, the sheepfold, with four walls. And then he was curious. There was no door there. So the shepherd says, this is where the sheep were led at night, and they're going to sleep there. And Morgan asked the question, where's the door? And the shepherd says, I am the door. He doesn't have any knowledge about the Bible. He's not speaking in the language of the New Testament or anything like that. He's not familiar with Jesus at all. But he says exactly the same thing. I am the door. And he was very surprised, Morgan, being a Christian preacher. And he asked the question, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by the door? You are the door. And he says, at night, when my sheep are in the sheepfold, I lay down in an open space, and I protect them. And if any enemies like wolves come, I will recognize it. And they will never get into the sheepfold. And also, my sheep will never get out without crossing me. So that's the imagery here when Jesus says, I am the door of the sheep. I am the door of the sheepfold. So Jesus, as he says this, Jesus means himself as the protector from the attack. And then we have a question. We have to ask the question, what is the enemy? Who's the enemy of our present life? Who is the enemy? That's the question. We don't really worry about wolves attacking us at night, right? But who is the enemy? Our enemies are people. Always. Our enemies are people. Sinful people. And everyone is sinful. In our lives, our ultimate enemy is sin. We all know that. But sin cannot be thought of separately from people. Sin shows its power through people. So our enemies are people. And almost like imagine that you're in the sheepfold and your enemies at the door of the sheepfold. And sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you. Genesis 4:7. It's scary. Scary people out there. And when you talk about our enemies, our people, we talk about two things. Sin of others and sin within us. Two things. So we are supposed to fear sin. And it always, like I said, sin shows its power through people. And two things. Sin shows its power through other people. So sinful nature of people, how does it show? How does it show in your daily life? Through their words, through their aggressiveness. And sometimes they really attack you physically. And what sin does is sin drives you and drives people towards destruction. And sin means destruction. Sin drives you towards the destruction of relationship, destruction of your emotions, leads you to a destructive thinking and destruction of society and communities. And if we leave it unchecked, our lives will end in despair and emptiness and extreme loneliness. And when you look at the sheep, real sheep, without a shepherd, the interesting thing is that some strong sheep get fatter and fatter, and the weak sheep get thinner and thinner. Why is that? Because there's no sheep. So imagine that the sheep are people. So they don't care for each other without shepherd. That's what happens between people. What they need is the shepherd. And we are the ones who are called to be under his care. Under his care. And what do we do? Recognize that we have the good shepherd and the door of our protection. Door that protects us from the people, sinful people, basically everyone. We don't have to be defensive. We don't have to be defensive. When we get attacked by, people, especially your spouses or your girlfriend or your boyfriend, we get attacked. They're your enemies. You feel like you're dealing with enemies every day. Well, not really, real, like the enemy, but they feel like you feel like they're your enemies. But you don't have to be defensive because you have the door. You have the good shepherd always protect you. You don't become your own protector. But you accept. But usually you get attacked for your weakness, right? You know that you're wrong. You know that you have some weaknesses, but you don't want to show them as your weaknesses, right? So what do? Protect yourself because you're the only one who can protect you. That's not what Jesus is saying here. I am the door. I am the protector. You don't have to protect yourself. That's okay. Nothing will harm you. Whether it's the consequence of your sin or the consequence of the sin of others, nothing will be able to harm you. So self-defensive, you don't have to be self-defensive. So that's something that we have to remember. And the other thing, sin within me. Sin within me. It's fear. Sin within me. We always fear. Fear of what? Fear of something bad happening to me or my family or my children. And sinful things, the fear. Something might happen to me. Something bad might happen to me. And our sinful thoughts, our lust and greed, hostility, selfishness, even narcissism. They're all sinful thoughts. Now, how do you protect from them? Because those things, those sinful things, thoughts, will drive you to the destruction, drive you towards the destruction of the relationship and destruction of yourself. And how do you protect yourself from those thoughts? Remember that Jesus is not sitting in the back and watch you rot in your life. No, he doesn't do that. He is the good shepherd. When he says he's the good shepherd and the door and the protector, he protects the sin, protects you from sin within you as well. So what do? Pray for your heart. Pray that God will protect you from sinful nature within you. And that will transform your daily lives and transform your joy, the life of joy. And that will definitely transform you in that you look at yourself differently, you look at others differently, most of all, you look at God differently. Nothing will be able to harm you. That's the message of the main message today, because you have the door. You have the door and the good shepherd. They are actually the same thing, as I mentioned. And what do? Like I said, pray first, and second, know and recognize the voice of the shepherd. How do you do it? You have to read his word. You have to know the word. And he speaks to you every way. He is ready to speak to you. He is ready to protect you. And he is already there. And third, and the last, go in and out and find pasture in him. Go in and out. What does it mean? It affects every aspect of your life. Whether you go in, whether you go out, his protection, the special protection you receive, affects every aspect of your life. Felix of Nola, who was a presbyter in the third century. And he was persecuted. He was at the end, was martyred. And he was fleeing from the enemies, the Roman Empire. And he was fleeing, but escaping from the city. And he found the little space between the rocks. And there was a spider making a spider web. And he barely got in. And after he got in, the spider finishes his web. And when the enemies came, and there was a spider web, and the enemy wouldn't even bother to look at inside. Because, nobody would be able to get through that delicate spider web. But he was saved. But here's what he said after all. Where God is, a spider's web is a wall. And where he is not, a wall is but a spider's web. So here's the catch. When you believe he's always protecting you, your life is different because you feel safe and you have peace. You know that. But if you don't believe, if you don't have a shepherd with you, your life is full of fear and loneliness.